Hey guys, I'm not going to dwell on things too much here, just doing a little bit of an intro and I'll speak to you all at the end. Hope you enjoy. We see Kakarot and Vegeta battling it out once again. Every punch thrown sends a ripple and ends in a clash, with Kakarot slowly, very slowly managing to pull out a win, slowly starting to overpower Vegeta when a loud thud wakes him. Kakarot is pulled out of his dream as he opens his eyes to see his brother in front of him. Raditz does a gesture, telling Kakarot to get out of the pod. The Saiyan doing so is told by his brother that they need to get dressed. Frieza wants to talk to them, and Raditz has a funny feeling it might have something to do with what has happened, and also a normal power level checkup. Hearing this, Kakarot's nervous. After all, he knows they have all probably jumped up a massive amount after their battle, but he hopes it's not enough for Frieza to poke into what happened too much. Kakarot gets dressed as he meets up with the other Saiyans, much like when they were on the other planet a few days ago. However, this time, the atmosphere is a lot more aggressive. After all, they had just had a massive battle, but two Saiyans have kept their heads focused. Both Kakarot and Vegeta understand that they need to keep their heads cool for now, and in this meeting, they need to work together. Vegeta starts talking, saying how he's already figured something out before Kakarot even arrived, going on to explain how he should tell Frieza that they all fought one another. This causes everyone to flinch, and Kakarot saying how they should do the opposite. But Vegeta goes on explaining, Frieza's no idiot. He'll figure out that we are lying, and if he figures that out, he might start digging a little bit deeper. I don't know everything, but there might be a way he can learn the full truth. I say we tell him a half-truth. He won't dig too much deeper than that. After all, if we just say that we were fighting over who got to fight the strongest person on the planet, there's no doubt in my mind he'll believe it. Everyone's unsure, but Kakarot's pretty interested hearing this. Kakarot says, agreeingly, that's not a half bad idea, Prince. I guess you're not old brawn after all. Vegeta responds saying how he's not the only tactician here, and being a low class, he's already behind. Kakarot then leans into Vegeta, whispering how they should fake an argument. This would truly sell the idea, but not fill the others in. Hopefully they'll catch on, but this way, it'll look a bit more genuine. Vegeta agrees, pretty surprised to hear the low class come up with a decent idea, as they all start heading into Frieza's chambers, with Frieza standing in front of them, taking a sip out of his drink, shouting for all of them to line up, and telling Zarbon to read out their powers. Frieza begins to talk to the Saiyans. So, monkeys, do any of you want to explain why you were so hurt after such a simple mission? Or are you all just that incompetent? Vegeta speaks up. Sorry, Frieza, but the low class started an argument with us about who should get to fight the strongest person on the planet. Things got violent fast, and I put them all in their place. It won't happen again. Kakarot chimes up. You know that was my fight, Vegeta. I called it first, with the prince showing a small smile before screaming back. Do I have to put you back in your place again, low class? Turles sort of catching on. Try something. Last time I checked, Prince, us low class won that fight. Soon, the others start to figure out what's going on as the verbal argument starts to break out. Things start slowly getting physical, with a few punches being thrown, as Frieza laughs just up into the point where a punch is thrown and it destroys his glass. He shoots a death beam inches from all of them, causing them all to freeze in their place, and tells them to stop now. Looking over to Zarbon, he asks for him to read out their power levels. As he reads out, Kakarot at a power level of 10,600, Raditz 12,400, Turles 11,000, Vegeta 22,000, Nappa 10,000. Hearing this, Kakarot gives a bit of a grin. After all, he has at least taken over Nappa. He loves that idea, but he soon turns his attention back towards Frieza, who is still speaking, and going on to say, Listen here, monkeys. I must say, I'm amused for now, so I'll let this slide. But next time you step out of line in front of me again, I'll end all of you without a second thought. Now all of you leave, besides you, Vegeta, and Kakarot. Raditz looks at his brother, worried and confused why he's staying, but he doesn't linger around long enough to hear what's happening. After all the Saiyans have left, Frieza then looks at the two Saiyans, going on to say, "Next time something like that happens, I expect you two to stop it. After all, any more issues like that, and I have to kill all of you." Hearing this, both Kakarot and Vegeta are pissed, but also kind of horrified at the same time. The pair want to shout back at Frieza, but bite their tongues. As they're about to leave, Frieza begins to explain their next mission to them. With Kakarot knowing this planet, and knowing it has low combat level, he thinks this should be a job that even some foot soldiers should be able to deal with. But he doesn't speak up, seeing it as a chance to get some good training in, and some good practice with the Great Ape State. Now, with the pair leaving and informing the others, they all soon head off. Back in Frieza's office, Frieza grabs his chin, starts thinking. He then turns towards his henchman after a few seconds of thought, saying, "The Saiyans have gotten way too comfortable. I think it's time their race comes to an end. Zarbon, Dodoria, take Q with you to that planet I just sent them on, and kill them for me, would you?" Zarbon, hearing this, nods, with him and Dodoria collecting Q, and heading off to the planet a day after the Saiyans. Now, with the Saiyans, after a long trip to the planet, they soon arrive, with them all sort of meeting up in the middle of nowhere as they start their training to control the Great Ape State. Vegeta starts sharing his plan, something he formulated over the bit of travel he had. Kakarot's kind of amazed to see how well Vegeta's planning everything out, but then remembers that Vegeta is actually pretty smart in his own right, and can probably rival him when it comes down to battle strategies. Vegeta goes on explaining, "Listen here, and I'll only say this once. I will only train one of you at a time. That way I can keep better track of what you're doing, and also don't have to deal with all of you at once. So, while I'm training up Kakarot to learn the Great Ape State, Turles and Raditz, get your low-class asses out of here. Go deal with this planet. That way Frieza won't be so suspicious when we come back and the planet was destroyed after a few days. As for you, Kakarot, I advise you get ready. You're about to go through hell that I provide. You'll be learning the Great Ape form, being as though you seem to know what you're doing. Now, I hope you can keep up. Nappa, be ready to make it an artificial moon, and be on guard to destroy it if things get out of hand." Vegeta shares a grin. Everyone hearing this is a bit confused at how well Vegeta took control, but Kakarot is happy to be the one getting trained first. Nappa is understanding that his job is kind of important, but also annoyed that he's going to have to sit on the side and do nothing. Turles and Raditz don't want to take orders from Vegeta and go to argue, but Kakarot gives them a look. Kakarot being this group's de facto leader, they trust him and head off to do so. Now, the reason Nappa understands that he's making the artificial moon instead of Vegeta is that it's quite consuming, and if he has to turn Great Ape to stop a rampaging Kakarot, he might actually not be strong enough to. So it makes sense. Now, with Kakarot getting ready to train, he stands in front of Vegeta, asking what he's going to be doing. With Nappa throwing up an artificial moon at Vegeta's request, Vegeta starts explaining to Kakarot what his training is. He looks towards him and explains the basics of Great Ape. Great Ape is something that pulls on your most primal instincts and your most savage intents. So to control that state, you need to prevent those feelings from overtaking you. Kakarot responds, "I know that, but how do I stop it from happening?" Vegeta, looking very annoyed, kind of pissed off already with Kakarot, explains, "I was getting to that before you cut me off. The way to do it is simple. Pride. Hold on to your pride as a Saiyan, as a warrior, or both, to prevent the beast from overtaking you. Of course, there's some science behind it, but that's not all that important. To me, my pride as a Saiyan is enough. As for you, being low class, I can't imagine you have much pride. But I'm willing to see what you're able to do." Kakarot, hearing this, first thinks he was interested in the science, but knows Vegeta wouldn't share this right now. He already does know some of the basics behind it anyway. So Kakarot hears this, and he decides he's at least ready to try it out. So Kakarot tells Vegeta he wants to give it a go. Vegeta gets on guard as he signals for Nappa to be on guard himself. As Vegeta tells Kakarot he's going to turn into a Great Ape first, as he turns into a great ape. He then tells Kakarot to do so. The Saiyan internally hypes himself up, before looking up to the power ball in the sky, and slowly starting his transformation. He repeats in his mind how he won't lose. He won't lose to this beast, and he won't lose to Frieza. Kakarot slowly begins to fully transform, and after a few seconds, he's a full great ape. A few seconds go by, quiet. Kakarot feels almost as if he's got control, but then he feels this primal intent overtake him. He puts his hands to his head and begins to scream out, not in pain, but just from pure rage. Vegeta can tell that Kakarot has at least got a tiny bit of control. He assumes it's as how far he made it by himself, and after a few seconds, Kakarot fully loses it. Vegeta tells Nappa to stop the Powerball as the pair begin to shrink. Kakarot is annoyed he lost control, as Vegeta tells Kakarot that low class like him is going to struggle a lot more than this in this training. Kakarot, annoyed, asks to start the training again, with them spending the better part of the day doing so, but after a while, Kakarot's annoyed at the minor progress he makes, and heads off to destroy a city or two. But while out, Kakarot continues to think about what Vegeta said, about holding on to his pride and not losing to a beast. Vegeta, annoyed that Kakarot called her quits for the day, heads off to do some destroying himself with Nappa. The pair mock Kakarot, but secretly, Vegeta's kind of impressed with how much ground Kakarot made in one day, and how much he had managed to do on his own. Now when nightfall happens, the Saiyans meet back up with one another. Turles and Raditz are interested in to see how much ground Kakarot made, but the Saiyan doesn't say anything, while Nappa and Vegeta mock him openly. But like I said, Vegeta is actually still kind of impressed with Kakarot, and can tell he is on the right track. Most of the Saiyans settle down for the night, however Kakarot can't sleep. Thinking to himself, he heads off to destroy some cities, once again finding himself thinking how to control this power, but he just gets more frustrated and gets no sleep. The next day comes around, and everyone can tell that Kakarot hadn't slept, but none of them say a word about it, as they begin the same routine as yesterday. Which is when a small problem arrives. Raditz sees something flying in from the distance, and Turles gets a better look. Seeing it to be Zarbon, Dodoria, and Q, he shouts out to them and alerts the others, who see them coming, as the trio land and stare down the Saiyans. Raditz begins to be the one to break the silence, asking, "What are you doing here?" But the Saiyans already know, and are just hoping for a different answer. Zarbon goes on to say, "I must say, you Saiyans have been much more interesting. However, your time has come to an end. It's been interesting, that I can say." This being said, the Saiyans take a fighting stance, and Nappa announces, "You should have brought more men." Q laughs, having learnt the Saiyans' power levels. He knows where he stands with them, and he understands the only one he needs to avoid getting into a fight with is Vegeta. There is a few moments of silence, but Dodoria rushes at the Saiyans. There's a lot of ground in one jump, but Turles and Raditz are able to respond, holding Dodoria in place. The two seeing an opportunity to go to land a few hits, but before they can do anything significant, Q flies in, kicking Turles away, causing Dodoria to win the clash and knocks Raditz flying away. Q, wanting to deal with the Saiyans as fast as possible, charges up a blast and sends it straight towards Turles. But, thanks to a bit of luck, Kakarot manages to move Turles out of the way using a blast of his own. Of course, this does do some damage to Turles, but it avoided the much more intense blast of Q. Annoyed to see that Kakarot caught on with what was happening, but he doesn't care too much. They'll all die by the end of the day, as he rushes off after the Saiyan that was just sent flying, whereas Dodoria rushes off after Raditz, who is his target right now. Vegeta, seeing this, tells the other two Saiyans who have not moved too much to get out there and help the others. Kakarot goes to argue, but Vegeta just responds to him, "Go help your brother, or he'll die." Hearing this, Kakarot flinches up a little bit and rushes off after Dodoria. Nappa tells Vegeta that he doesn't really want to help the lower class. Vegeta says they're his best bet for now. After all, Vegeta doesn't plan on defending anyone. As Vegeta says this, Nappa realises that right now, regardless of how they feel about one another, they need to work together. Vegeta locks eyes with Zarbon as he gets ready to fight. Over with Dodoria and Raditz, Raditz manages to collect himself, and just before Dodoria can get on him, Saiyan thinks fast. Inspired from his brother, he quickly gets his foot under the sand below him and kicks it straight into Dodoria's eyes. Blinding the Saiyan temporarily, he lands a gut punch, then catches the sight of Kakarot rushing in after them. Kakarot quickly kicks Dodoria away from his brother as the two share a nod and get ready to fight. Dodoria slowly gains his vision back, and the Saiyans allow him to do so. After all, they're going to try and fight somewhat fair. And just as Dodoria gets his vision back, the two brothers rush him. Dodoria manages to catch on with what's happening fast as he tries to block what's coming towards him, but Kakarot and Raditz use their pretty good synergy to land a surprise attack on his face. Kakarot fakes out a punch as Raditz goes directly kneeing him straight into the face. This staggers him backwards as the pair manage to open up a combo opportunity, start landing multiple barrages of hits on the alien. Of course, Dodoria collects himself and gets ready to fight properly this time. And when this battle begins, Raditz is the one to take the front line. After all, he's the stronger of the two brothers and is able to hold off against Dodoria a bit better than Kakarot is. Of course, whenever a clash or an opportunity is given, Kakarot does take it, but he's watching very closely to how Dodoria fights, trying to pick up whatever he can. Now, after a while, Dodoria uses the same trick that Raditz used moments ago. A blast straight towards the ground, he blinds the Saiyans, not being able to see. After all, the pair had taken their scouters off for when they started their training. He uses this chance using his own scouter to land a hit in on Kakarot and separate him from his brother. Kakarot's surprised to see what happened and is actually kind of impressed by Dodoria's thinking, but he also remembers that Raditz just used the same trick earlier, so he's not all that impressed. But he doesn't have too much time to think. Dodoria knows that Kakarot is the weaker of the two, and he plans on killing him fast. Dodoria uses really strong attacks, putting all of his power into every punch he can, hoping to kill him. Kakarot knows that these punches are too fast for him to even be able to think about dodging. Defensive and starts blocking. Each attack still hits, but does a little bit less damage than it should have. Dodoria beats into Kakarot for a while before eventually lining up a perfect opportunity to take Kakarot's head off with one massive punch. He throws the attack straight towards Kakarot, but the Saiyan manages to dodge the attack, as he returns in favour, landing a punch in Dodoria's stomach. Dodoria is slightly confused, after all that attack should have been too much, but Kakarot stands his ground. Dodoria gets back into his barrage of attacks, however this time Kakarot's almost able to dodge some of them. All attacks still hit, but less vital places. Kakarot shifting his body in such a way where it's not being hit fully on, and he's only taking some smaller jabs because of so. Eventually, this gives Kakarot the opportunity to catch one of Dodoria's punches, holding onto his opponent's arm hard, which is when Raditz rushes in towards the pair, kneeing Dodoria's arm, almost breaking it. The alien's face winces out in pain, but Kakarot doesn't hold up, as he grabs hold of it even tighter and flings the alien backwards, slamming him straight into the ground. After doing this, Kakarot lets out a sigh of pain. He's taken a lot more damage than he's really letting on, with Dodoria also being on pretty bad terms, to be fair. The fight continues on for a while, so let's jump over with Turles and Nappa versus Q. The pair are struggling to coordinate an attack on the Frieza soldier, with Nappa getting up and close trying his best to land anything good. However, Turles is much more of a ranged fighter and his arsenal is much more equipped for that, so he feels more confident with his blast than anything. This causes the two to have a lot of friction. After all, Nappa is often getting hit by Turles' attack, thanks to them not really being coordinated, and of course these attacks do actually hurt Nappa a fair bit, and these also give Q a chance to land a serious blow on Nappa, meaning that over time Nappa is accumulating a lot of hits from both friendly and enemy attacks. Now over a few short minutes this causes Nappa to eventually scream out to Turles, telling him to stop being a bitch and get in here and fight. As Turles shouts out for him to stop being a pussy and deal with it already. As the pair argue, Q takes his shot, firing a blast towards Turles, who ends up taking it head on. With it hurting the Saiyan a lot, Q takes his chance to get a good few hits in on Nappa as well. However, the big Saiyan used the distraction of Turles getting his hit in and landing a lariat on Q. This sends his opponent flying away as he rushes back after Q, and Turles collects himself and starts taking into account where Nappa is, as he puts his arm out and fires off a sudden storm, which moves around Nappa and hits Q dead on. All blasts connect and set Nappa up for another attack, allowing him to kick Q in the stomach. Q was ready for this as he grabs onto Nappa's leg and pulls him in, headbutting him straight in the nose. This causes Nappa to grab his face in pain, and almost pass out. As Q then rockets off towards Turles, the Saiyan braces for the fight upcoming as Q comes in and starts unleashing a barrage of punches and kicks at the Saiyan. Of course, Turles is able to dodge some, but soon he's getting hit a lot more, and it's beginning to hurt a lot. Turles tries his best to keep up with the fight, but he much prefers a long-ranged approach. Of course, Nappa collects himself and sees what's happening. He smirks and weakly lifts up his arm, and he then flicks his fingers upwards, causing a giant glow to happen beneath both Q and Turles. It doesn't take long for Turles to realise what's going on, as he shouts out what the fuck Nappa is doing. Old Saiyan laughs as he says, "Getting revenge." A massive explosion sends both people caught in it flying away. Turles takes a heavy blow from this, while Q is hurt but not too badly. Turles, not being able to move after this attack, is stuck on the ground. Q sees this and goes after Turles, but a blast hitting Q seconds before he can land a punch on Turles causes him to look away, where he sees Vegeta, having thrown a blast towards him while fighting Zarbon to save Turles. Of course, this allowed Zarbon to get a good hit in on Vegeta, but the Prince managed to stop Q from killing Turles. Speaking of this, the fight between Zarbon and Vegeta goes a lot like the canon fight. Vegeta's winning near the start until Zarbon transforms, where Vegeta begins to lose, but the Prince still found himself saving Turles when the Saiyan needed it, and all he can think to himself is, why did he do that? The Saiyans around the planet fight for their lives as the desert around them begins to break out into sandstorms, thanks to all the energy being thrown around. Now over with Kakarot and Raditz, the pair are holding off Dodoria well, with the purple alien down to his last legs. Raditz, seeing this, tells his brother to go help the others, as he can finish this quickly. Kakarot, who is roughed up, does agree to do so, as he rockets off towards the others, while Raditz smiles, saying to Dodoria, "Looks like after all that time looking down on us Saiyans, I get the last laugh," as he chuckles slightly. But Dodoria begins to beg for his life, and in hopes of being spared, shares any information he has. He shares how Frieza was the one to destroy the planet, confirming to Raditz that his father was correct, and how Frieza's annoyed with them and sent them here to kill you. Of course, these are all things that Raditz knew, but he thanks Dodoria, saying he really appreciated the help, and for that, he'll make his death a bit more quick, as he kills the alien with one blast, while Dodoria curses out his name. Looking towards where Kakarot had gone, he gets ready to go help, but just before he can do anything, he sees a small ball fly into the air. He quickly figures out it to be a power ball as he looks down, rushing towards the battle, wondering what the hell is going on. Now, only a few moments back, when the youngest Saiyan arrived to see his comrades having lost most of their battles, the only one left standing being Vegeta, who was having to hold off both Q and Zarbon in his monster state. Kakarot panics in an un-Saiyan-like fashion as he runs towards Turles, checking he's okay, and he is relieved to see he is alright. Nappa is also alive. The pair are just very badly roughed up. Turles chuckles, saying, was Kakarot worried about him? Kakarot screams at Turles, saying, "Don't be stupid." He asks if the other two will be able to fight. Nappa and Turles shake their heads, saying they're basically both out of energy. Hearing this, Kakarot gets ready to head into the fight, unsure if his power alone will be enough to turn the tide of the battle, but he knows that Raditz should be here any second now. Basically left Dodoria on death's door anyway. Turles, seeing that Kakarot's kind of nervous, says that they should use the Great Ape state. Well, he should. Nappa, hearing this, thinks this is a good idea, but reminds everyone he's basically out of energy, and he can only hold the Powerball for a few seconds, and it's going to take him some time to gather the last of his energy to form it. But the young Saiyan is nervous. After all, he hasn't got control of this state, and it's going to be a massive risk, a risk he isn't sure will pay out. Pear can see this, and Nappa calls him a coward, where Turles takes a different approach. Turles explains that if he's not going to fight, he might as well just surrender and go to Frieza, get executed, because in the states they're in, this might be their best bet. Looking towards Vegeta, Kakarot can tell that Vegeta's pretty much fighting on his last legs as well. Seeing this, Kakarot grits his teeth and asks Nappa how long he needs. The Big Saiyan explains he's just going to need a minute to gather the orb, and he slowly starts forming energy around his arm. Explains to Kakarot that he's also only going to be able to hold it up for a few moments. Kakarot nods, telling Nappa to shout him when it's ready, as he rushes into the battle. tackles Zarbon in the back, having not been noticed by the green monster, and this allows Vegeta to land a punch straight into Zarbon's gut. Kakarot then uses his momentum and rolls on top of Zarbon, then uses his explosive palm strike, which, side note, I didn't explain too well. It would work a bit like Katsuki Bakugo's from My Hero's quirk, but is mostly used to readjust Kakarot's positioning if he misses an attack, but it can be used to land some serious blows, also is very key consuming, to send Zarbon crashing towards the ground, but this attack does hardly anything to hurt Zarbon. This just gives both Kakarot and Vegeta a quick opportunity to get some hits in on cue, hoping to kill him. The pair both land a solid blow, but thanks to their very injured state and them being weakened, it was hardly nothing. Zarbon soon rejoins the fight, rushing in and kicking Vegeta straight in the chin, sending him shooting into the sky, as he shouts out for Q to kill Kakarot. The purple alien is more than happy to agree to do so, as Zarbon rushes off after Vegeta, as Q grins down Kakarot. Kakarot and Q begin their fight, as Kakarot goes for a different approach. He doesn't decide to break down Q's battle style. It's too much of a risk when he's running this low on energy, so a slugfest begins. Q and Kakarot both being heavily injured means that they are able to go toe to toe pretty evenly. Q is still the stronger of the two, and Kakarot can tell that Q's got a lot more steam left than he does. As the fight continues, Kakarot is desperately waiting for the signal. As seconds drag by, feeling like hours, Kakarot can feel himself losing ground when a blast hits Q in the back of the head. This makes the purple alien flinch, as Kakarot sees Turles weakly holding his arm up, shouting out now, when the bold fighter behind him throws a powerball into the air. Kakarot follows it with his eyes, and just about to think to himself, remembering his pride, but then stops, shouting aloud, "Fuck this!" As he starts thinking about defeating these bastards in front of him, begins to morph into a grey ape. Once Q and Zarbon catch on to what's happening, it's far too late. They're out of desperation shoot blasts towards Kakarot, but his metamorphosis has already begun, and his power is already increasing. Vegeta looks on and figured out this was their plan. Looking at the great ape slowly growing, he begins to panic, knowing that Kakarot is going to be their last hope. He watches, seeing how the Saiyan responds at first. Once the transformation is done, Kakarot stays quiet. This scares everyone. Even Raditz was just showing up to see Kakarot stood there. Q flies up to the Saiyan, unsure of what's happening. Maybe he passed out, but before he can even finish those words, a sudden clap of Kakarot's hands going together crushed Q between them. His massive hands kill him in 1 second. As he turns towards Zarbon, he can see that the Saiyan is in full control. Not wanting to waste a second, he appears above him, stomping his massive foot straight into the Frieza's right-hand man, killing him in one blow, as the giant ape screams out in victory before he starts to feel the effects of his injuries, and Nappa, losing his power ball, causes the Saiyan to shrink as he slowly gets back down to normal size and grabs his body, feeling a great amount of pain, feeling almost like he's going to pass out, but grips on to consciousness, knowing that he and the others need to make a plan. With them all pulling themselves up, they are clinging to the last bits of their consciousness. They all gather around and are quiet for a second before Raditz confirms that their now dead opponents were sent to kill them by Frieza, and if they were to return, they will easily be killed by the Emperor. I guess the group don't know what to do. As Vegeta has an idea, he weakly walks over to his pod and grabs his scouter. So grabs a stick, which is confusing everyone. Weakly walks back to everyone, turns on his scouter and throws it a good few feet away from them. Close enough that whatever they said could be heard, but distant enough away that it's not perfect. With the prince then writing in the dirt, "Everything I say, we are doing the opposite." The group are confused but watch Vegeta as he slowly starts saying aloud, "Seems like Frieza sent them to kill us, but they were no match for our power. But we aren't ready to fight Frieza just yet. So let's stick together and train on a far-off planet, off the Frieza Force's radar. Then we'll strike in 1 year from now." Kakarot, figuring out what Vegeta's trying to imply, says, "Waiting a year seems stupid. I could take Frieza now." Vegeta is happy that Kakarot played along, shouting back, "Don't be a moron. You're a low-class idiot. I'm your prince. I'm the one who will kill Frieza. And you'll follow what I say. Let's leave this rock before he gets here. Kakarot and Vegeta then walk to every pod, putting their scouters in there, and then sending them off to the same planet on the other side of the universe. Everyone else is confused as the pair gesture for them to follow away from the scouter. They catch on and head over there slowly. Once they are away from the scouter, Kakarot explains, "Not bad thinking, Vegeta. I can't say I would have thought of that." Vegeta smirks and says how that's why he is the prince. As the others ask what the real plan is, Vegeta explains how they will stay on this planet and train everyone to have the Great Ape state. By the time they all get the effects of this Zenkai, they should be strong enough in their Great Ape forms to kill Frieza. Kakarot disagrees, as he speaks up, thinking he has a better plan. He says, "I think it would be better for us to split up and get away from this planet fast. Once Frieza figures out your bluff, Vegeta, he will come here next. And if we haven't fully healed and gotten the full effect of this Zenkai, or even worse, we haven't got control of the Great Ape State, we will be up Shit's Creek and there will be no paddle. So, I believe it's best for us to split up. Splitting up will make sure that our powers aren't picked up as easy, even when we're on low-level planets. Then, after a few months of us lying low, we can recollect on a planet we all agree on." Vegeta, hearing this, does see the improvements and understands Kakarot's knowledge, and has in fact come to respect Kakarot somewhat for his battle plans and just general planning as a whole. But no one likes the fact they feel like they're running like cowards. Kakarot, realizing this and feeling the same, explains how it's their best bet for survival and their best chance for avenging their race. Everyone does agree, and even though Vegeta doesn't want to run, he does agree as well. The group spend a few moments planning on where to meet. There are a few moments of bickering on what planet to meet on, unsure of whether to meet exactly in front of Frieza or just before. Vegeta brings up the idea, explaining how he has a younger brother, and explains how he's hidden away on some planet that has nothing on it, and Frieza has no reason to check that planet. He and Nappa are the only two who know of Tarbal's existence on that planet, so it should be fine. The group want to bring up the idea that why Vegeta never got his brother, but they don't think too much into it. He goes on to explain how after 3 months people should start showing up there. If you don't initially show up before a whole year has passed from this day, that's when their attack on Frieza will be, and that is the only truth they told over the scouter. If you don't show up, you will be presumed dead or a traitor. Dead, you died a Saiyan, and if you ran, we will hunt you until we find you. Everyone hearing this is perfectly fine with it, as they begin to raid a big city and legally acquire some spaceships. They had a bit of cash saved up, they killed the owners, and they also stock up on some food, as everyone starts planning on which planet they're going to go and hide to, everyone having different ideas. But for now, that's where I'm leaving this. I originally was going to let people decide where everyone goes, but I kind of have a plan on what I'm doing, so it should be okay for me to just do what I'm doing. I hope people like this part. This part was probably recorded over the better part of like 4 weeks. So if the audio sounds different in sections, sometimes I might have just been really tired when recording it. This outro has been required 15 minutes after I woke up. I'm having a really interesting time with my recording setup at the moment, so it's just been whenever I get the chance I start doing scripts. I hope people also enjoyed the MCU What Ifs update. After all, I had left it for ages, and I haven't seen the responses yet. I'm recording it 2 days before its release. But yeah, I'm hoping it was well received. With that said, though, I don't really have else to say. Thank you all for the support. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you all have a good day. See you later.